Hello and welcome to Make It Experiential, the new podcast series from XI, hosted by myself, Franco. I'm the head of client services here at XI, and I've been part of the IUF group for around 3 years. Before that, with over a decade experience in consumer electronics and retail and events. I'm joined by Andy.
Hey, yes, I've got 5 years experience in experiential, but also 20 years commercial design experience, which kind of covers photography, UI design, animation stuff, and now sort of AI experimentation. So.
And in this series, we cover culturally relevant moments and events that are coming up within the next 6 to 12 months. This week, we are covering the London Marathon, the world's most popular running event. And it is a great pleasure to introduce Dan Strang, serial investor and entrepreneur, and the original founder of Events Tag. That was the agency that then went on to become XI. So we're delighted to have you come back into the fold just for one grey morning. But yeah, for our audience, please give us a little bit of an introduction and tell us about yourself.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for the introduction and inviting me back into the fold of what was the original kind of home ground to the business that I started up. So I started Events Tag, or it's first known as Eventstagram, about 11, 12 years ago now, and built up that business to the kind of experiential powerhouse that it is or was in 2020. But we set out to try and build a company that was going to help brands to deliver value at brand experiences and live events. And we kind of built that company up for 10 years or so. The IUF group was a big partner of ours. We helped them with a lot of retail experiences into Sports Direct and lots of their other clients. And then in 2020, after a pretty tough period in COVID, where there were very, very few live events going on, we ended up getting acquired by the IUF group. So I started working with them for a year or two and brought Franco on, who then took on the mantle and has helped to bring XI into the place that it is now. But over the last couple of years, I've been building a brand called Coopah, which is a run coaching app. And that obviously has great ties into the London Marathon. And actually, London Marathon are an investor in us, and we work in their offices. We work very closely with the London Marathon. So it's pretty exciting here to talk about both experiential and running, which is a pretty big passion of mine and my current business.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And before we go into the main content of this episode, I will note for our listeners and viewers that we do have a 10-month-old puppy on the floor. She is busily chewing a bone that should hopefully take her the duration of the episode. But if there are any barks or other noises, please excuse us, and we'll try our best to just plough on with the episode. So, for anyone who's watching, you'll see that we are wearing our running jerseys. It's important to note that these all belong to Dan. So there must be a kind of, I guess, a long history of being involved in running clubs. And on that note, everyone knows someone who's done the London Marathon, right? It's this kind of cultural powerhouse in the United Kingdom that everyone's got a story. I guess you've got someone this year.
Well, my identical twin brother, he did the marathon a few years ago, and now his wife is doing it. So I guess eventually I'm going to have to get around to doing it.
Well, I was going to say you could have claimed that if he's your identical.
Well, that's true. Actually, yeah, I could. Yeah. You wouldn't notice the photograph. So, but yeah. And what about your?
My wife did it last year. But I felt very embarrassed because I was actually in Nigeria at the time. So I wasn't able to go and support her, which I felt a little bit miserable about. But I tracked her progress from a very rural airport in Nigeria where I had about 1 bar of 3G signal. But I could still actually see the live updates coming through.
And the marathon's a global event.
Yeah. I think I was still probably the one viewer pinging in from that part of the world.
Yeah, you'll be surprised actually. You get runners that travel across the world from the deepest, darkest countries to come and run the London Marathon. families and friends will be watching and tracking them on the app. But yeah, I've got a pretty plotted history of running clubs, running jerseys. I see most of the guys took the more modern jerseys from the pile that I brought in, but there are some nice 1990s kit from clubs that are in and around London and the Midlands. So yeah, I know a lot of people running. I actually probably know tens of thousands of people running the London Marathon in 2025 because we're a coaching app and and people use our app to get ready for the London Marathon. So I start to meet and know those users, and they've got a pretty good idea of how they're feeling and prepping now, which is 6 months to go was on Sunday. So they were into that thought process of how do I start training? How do I start thinking about running 26.2 miles on the 27th of April?
But of course, there's the huge stumbling block or wall, to use a marathon term, in a few months' time, which is Christmas. So surely people give themselves a time off, or do they just, do people typically kind of try and stay strict in your...
Yeah, it's interesting actually, and it's interesting from a brand point of view as well, because at what point do you start to engage with the runners? Traditionally, London Marathon, the organisations, and lots of the running industry have always felt that 16 weeks is when people start training. Now, 16 weeks conveniently is post-Christmas for the London Marathon and most of the April races. So they'll kind of, most sort of running races that are doing April will start to say at end of December, just after Christmas or first week of January. That's 16 weeks, start your training now. But actually our experience is that people engage way, way earlier than that. And actually once you find out you've got your place, which for this year in the London Marathon was kind of July time, like 9 months away, lots of people, especially for their first time, they start training. So they will download training apps. They will start to kind of engage. And actually, brands have got an opportunity to engage with people that are running that marathon for a whole 9 month period. And we found 70% of our runners started training more than 17 weeks away, so before that Christmas period. And yeah, they might have some breaks. And training is not a smooth. I won't talk too much about training for marathons, but it's not a smooth 16-week process that you train 5 times a week and you never stop. It is a series of steps where you go up, you go down, you get ill, you get injured, you have a little break for Christmas, and it's about kind of managing those ups and downs in a training journey. So having a bit longer is definitely something that we'd recommend, and I think there's opportunities for brands to get involved early.
And in terms of the foundations of what makes a good training program, I guess it leans very much into the values of the London Marathon itself, which we've got down to kind of community, charity, fitness, that sense of a challenge. I think there's some sore nipples along the way, kind of a shared experience for everyone. But yeah, maybe if you talk about community as that first element.
Yeah, I think there's some amazing community things that you see out of London Marathon. I mean, one of the things I was kind of shocked about is the Facebook groups that exist, and kind of not official London Marathon ones, but you have these communities of people that are 50,000 people strong. It's people that are not even running this year but have run the year before, and they are building relationships with people that they've never met before by giving them tips and providing advice and helping them out when they have those down moments that they are ill or they're injured or they've had a few too many drinks at Christmas and they feel bad about their training. There's this great group of people that just are connected by the fact that they're running this massive challenge for that year. The charity is a big part of it as well, and there's 60-70% of people that run on the marathon do it for a charity, and they build mini communities themselves. So you might have 50, 100 people running for a particular charity. They'll have their own WhatsApp group, they'll have their own community in there. So there's actually lots of places where I think what the interesting thing is that this takes over people's lives. So for lots of people, 9 months of their life is taken over by running this marathon. They're thinking about it all the time. They're training for it all the time. So any kind of, if they can build a relationship with somebody else who's got that same feeling, or a brand that's offering them something in and around that experience of the London Marathon, they're going to jump at it. So you've got a really captive, high-intent audience there to play with.
That's brilliant. And the shared communities that brands are looking to tap into, rather than trying to reach X 100,000 or million people kind of across the country, actually that opportunity to go in at a micro level where you've got, a much smaller number of hyper-engaged people who are experiencing the marathon in one way. You know, perhaps it's people who are running for the same cause, or they've got the same circumstances that have led them to that. I know this is an element that's close to your heart with the refugee running club that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've touched on it a bit that everybody's particularly engaged in it, but there are these little mini communities inside of the London Marathon. I think diversity is a big issue, and diversity is something that when you look at the marathon, especially if you looked at it 5-10 years ago, you'd kind of say, okay, this is a pretty white, pretty middle class kind of experience that we're going after here, and maybe that's the kind of sponsors and stuff that they attracted. But that is definitely changing, and I think that these running crews, London Marathon, do an incredible job of trying to kind of build diversity and ethnicity, and making marathons feel accessible, and seeing people that from those communities going out and running it. And we do something similar with the Refugee Run Club. We've identified a group of people that don't have access to being active and to gaining fitness because they don't have the confidence in it, they don't have the kit, they don't have the resources. It's meant to be the most accessible sport in the world, but actually, if you don't feel confident enough to leave your house and to leave the hotel that you're staying in and go out for a run on the streets, which is not just refugees, there's lots of people that can feel like that. There's women that might feel scared about doing it in the darkness. There's people that might feel worried about their body image, going out wearing vests like this and lycra like we do. And I think making it accessible for those, and actually brands can really attach themselves to that, so they can stand for something, they can mean something, and it might not be a huge group of people that they're talking to at that point, but they can get really deep engagement and show a lot of their values by standing for something.
There are, thinking about some kind of brand running clubs. There's a Manchester-based brand called Represent who are doing amazing kind of mass runs in city centres, and that feeling of being part of something that's kind of bigger than one person going for a run is, it's so palpable. I know that Nike I think it was the largest city centre run that's happened recently. We'll have to kind of add it into the notes, but particularly for our clients, that's the landscape with which brand can stretch this marathon experience out beyond the one-day event and into an ongoing club.
Yeah, definitely. That's why I think training is such an important aspect of the marathon in general, because, like we said, we've got this 9-month period, but why can't brands offer these long run communities? Everybody's going out once a week, they're doing a long run, they don't want to do that by themselves. Why can't a brand kind of say, okay, I'm gonna own that, I'm gonna be there every Sunday? And there are some brands that do it. Tracksmith do it really well. They do a Sunday long run.
On running, their Spitalfield store, I think it's every Wednesday, do a group, and I'm speaking to the staff there, and they said that it's anywhere between kind of 20 and 100 people who'll turn up every week, and what a awesome way to insert yourself into a community. Exactly,
and it's regular, and it becomes that thing that you're like, oh, I'm going to the Tracksmith run on Sunday, I'm going to do the Tracksmith long run, I'm going to do the on weekly Wednesday run, and you've got this every year. You've got this group of people training for the London Marathon that need some kind of community and support along that kind of 9-month journey.
I guess before we move on, do we have any kind of notes on the funny signs and funny outfits? Is this something that's still done? It seems like it's a shared cultural experience in some capacity. People in dinosaurs, or dressing up as a toaster and a piece of toast or something and running as a pair. Is this something which we're seeing continuously, or is that actually this dated version of kind of non-serious fit people?
No, not at all. I'm a big proponent of, actually, we think that running is much more about people hitting times and getting fit, and it's not. It's about mental health more than anything. We kind of surveyed a lot of our users, and we thought as a training app, we're like, yeah, people are paying for this because they want to get fitter and they want to get faster, and that's a very, very low motivation for it. People want to have fun. They want to do something that helps their mental health, that helps them go out and feel active and be active. So the fun part of it, which might be dressing up in a costume and running it not to try and get a time, but to run it because you want to do it and achieve it, is definitely a big part of the marathon. Culturally, it's different across the world. People that have run in Tokyo will know that fancy dress is not a thing there. And it is not common to see that. London, it definitely still is. They put some limits in this year, so I think people running as a group, so there was people previously that were running as like caterpillars and kind of big trains and buses. There was like 10, 15 people in there. I think they put a limit on that, so you might only be able to tie yourself to one other person, which I think is probably fair given the safety of 50,000 people running and 10 of you tied together. But generally, kind of anything goes. You know, you can carry a fridge on your back, which lots of people do. You can dress up as a rhino in a massive Save the Rhinos outfit, which is always there. Pint of London Pride beer. But again, that's, you know, great brands. I'd see these charities a little bit as brand experiences as well. Like, how are they? London Marathon for a charity is their biggest moment of the year. Save the Rhinos, I hear about them for one day out of 365 in the year, and that's because you see 20 massive rhinos running around London on a given day. But that will earn them the majority of their fundraising for that whole year is through people raising money on London Marathon Day, and then people seeing the rhinos and donating on that day. So yeah, the fancy dress can be a nice brand experience.
That's great, because something which we touched on in previous episodes is this idea of kind of shared experience, and if you've got everyone getting to see that kind of really, really authentic advert for Save the Rhinos at the same time, you know, no doubt absolutely kind of sweating it out underneath those costumes, then it really kind of drives home the kind of work that's involved in an organisation like that. And I don't know, was it London Pride that used to sponsor the marathon, or was it another beer brand?
London Pride were a sponsor at one point, and I don't know if they still are, but they were a sponsor at one point, and they had people in big beer outfits running around the marathon. It's a kind of showroom for your brand, and actually, you know, people wearing your vest. You know, I'm wearing my Coopah vest right now, but all the charities make every single runner wear their vest. They feel part of a community. But you also go around and go, what's that orange vest that everybody's wearing? Because there's 1,000 people wearing that orange vest. Well, it's a charity, and I think it's the same with brands with the London Pride. Like, you've got that space to use it, and you've probably got people running on your behalf. How do you get them noticed on the TV cameras, on the streets of London where you've got people watching?
And the other thing as well with fancy dress, but just like the names of when people's nicknames when they're running, and there's like brands now that have t-shirt vest printers on site, so you can actually just kind of get your nickname there, and then it kind of brings in the spectator, so you can just randomly shout someone you don't know, and you can kind of give them encouragement, which is a really nice kind of way of doing it.
Absolutely. Well, maybe next time when we do the ballot, we can do the kind of front and back of a horse.
Donkey, right? Maybe.
Yeah, flip a coin to see who gets which.
But you do have some incredible world records as well. So some people that do these things that are actually they go for times. So they're not doing it for fun. They're doing it to. There's a guy, one of our coaches, actually coached somebody to the world record Superman outfit, and I think he ran a 2:22 marathon or something like that. But you know, there's some crazy stats.
They should have their own category if they wanted to kind of emphasise the as you say, that kind of brand, charity sponsorship angle. Then for anyone who is dressed up, I guess if they're inserting rules to stop this, then it might be at odds with what they're trying to do.
Yeah, no, they definitely like fancy dress. I think it's just there's some danger elements to large scale people attached to each other. But I think that Guinness World Records get very heavily involved, and a lot of brands and charities will work with Guinness World Records to kind of say, okay, let's come up with a category, or let's look at the fastest banana or the fastest strawberry, and can we beat that this year? And I think that's always an opportunity for brands to do something interesting in and around those records.
Yeah, that would be cool actually if you had a live visual like leaderboard, like you know if you scanned in and you were going as a banana or a strawberry, and then you could actually kind of see like
Fastest
who's
bananas.
winning, like,
Yeah.
like,
The
It's
banana
kind of,
race.
Mario Kart style. You've got your avatars of your rhino and your banana and your pint and that sort of thing. Just having a small sub race,
Yeah.
kind of amongst all the other hundred thousands of people.
Yeah, no, it's very nice.
But really, the running show, when runners and their friends and families and colleagues will come to collect the gear, that seems to be one of the greatest in-person shared moments.
Yeah, so the running show is a huge, huge opportunity. You get hundreds of thousands of people over a few days, kind of coming to the EXL to go and collect their numbers, and everybody has to go there. So the runners have to go there to go and do it. So for New Balance, they see this as a big sales opportunity. So yes, brand recognition is high, but it's also about these runners doing a once in a lifetime experience for most of them. What are they going to buy as a souvenir to walk away with? So I think primarily they want to try and do that, and they'll sell London New Balance kit. But then I think from what I can see, that what they're also trying to do is, okay, well, if they don't buy the kit, like what can they walk away with as a memory, as a moment of starting your marathon weekend, or your marathon kind of journey, to then kind of leave with. And I think that's where they really kind of go into photo experiences. And it's like, okay, can New Balance, even their advertising, their out-of-home advertising was all about mentioning London. What you realise at that point is everybody wants something that says London 25 on it. Like, I've been there. So there's a lot of areas where they've got boards up there where you can go and pose with the London 25 sign. You can hold your number up. You've literally just picked up your number for the first time, which is an exciting moment. You've walked into the New Balance stand, you've seen the kit, and then what you want to do is stand, hold your number with something that says, I'm running London 25.
And at least at that moment, you actually look good, because I can imagine the photo at the end, you're going to be like
I think you look
mess,
scared.
but...
I don't know.
Yeah, just a nervous smile across the face.
Yeah, exactly.
Presumably, though, people aren't buying shoes at that point, or
They shouldn't be. Definitely part of our advice would be to definitely not buy some new pair of shoes on the running show and use them. But I reckon there's a few that do.
And the shoes must be out on display.
Yeah, I don't think New Balance are as scathing about that strategy as we might be.
But maybe it's a treat to yourself to continue your running journey after.
Yeah, I think that's what people say. But they release a new shoe for the London Marathon. They release a new kit for there's branded. You have a branded London Marathon shoe, I believe, but you definitely have branded London Marathon kit. So again, we wouldn't recommend you running it, but it might be a nice souvenir to have afterwards.
And then the split, I guess, in the kind of TCS side of the running show and then the London Marathon running show. Could you speak to, I guess, how that kind of relationship goes? I guess what the major differences will be in terms of their audiences and who gets to experience kind of each side of it.
Yeah, so I think being the title sponsor of the London Marathon gives you a different level of recognition, and obviously there's a bigger investment into that. But from a brand point of view, from an experience point of view, you really want to get the race known as yours. So I think from TCS point of view, they've taken on the sponsorship of this and multiple other races across the world, and they need that brand recognition of people starting to call it the TCS London Marathon. And we're starting to see that, actually. So, I'm surprised I get people saying to me, do you do training plans for TCS? I'm like, you mean the London Marathon? And they're like, no, the TCS. And it kind of, starting to do that. So the running show is big for them in terms of putting themselves in the front of being that title sponsor. So they have a large area. The difficulty, I guess, is they don't do anything consumer. So for New Balance, it's very easy. They want to sell their shoes, they want to sell their kit. It's very easy for people to do. People running the marathon are not going there necessarily looking for consulting services, and I don't think it's what they're thinking about on that day. So actually, they need to do even more on an experiential side to add value to that experience.
Andy, you were saying that when you were spectating, that in itself is a kind of endurance test. Quite how much kind of movement you have to do just to get around the city. But is there a way that we could make it more experiential for the viewers themselves?
Absolutely, because I'll be doing. My brother's asked me to do this next year, which is like plan the route for the spectator in terms of like where to go and watch and move around. And I thought, well, wouldn't that be a cool idea that if you had different activations at different areas? So, I mean, again, you could be like for a brand, there could be like quizzes or photo experiences. But what it would do, it would track each station that you're at, and then give you like the mileage that you've probably covered walking around, and then maybe they can actually align with the charity and like for the amount of miles you've done, put funding towards that. I know that they said something. There was something about like spectators can like cover between 5 to like 10 miles of the course. So there's lots of opportunities there for brands to actually do like little pop-up activations.
And especially on the charity side as well, that kind of those micro donations of X per mile covered or per step or anything like that. With the tracking between the different solutions there would be really good, because it means that not everyone has to connect it to their smartwatch or Whoop band or something like that. We had done a marathon experience a few years ago, which was actually for Flora, where they had a number of treadmills set up, and then I think you had to do 200 meters, so it wasn't too grueling. And then I think they donated trees rather than money to kind of forest. But that all looked very cool from the outside. You get a photo in front of Buckingham Palace and everything like that.
Yeah, I think as you've experienced, it's a long day. Like watching and travelling, it's difficult to get around. There's shut roads. You don't know where it is. It's not normal London where you can just top on a line bike and get between one place to the other. And also the timings. So your friends might be running for 4.5, 5, 6 hours. You have to get to the points early. You have to wait for an hour or so before they arrive. You don't know where they're going to be. You don't know exactly what timing they're going to be. So you're there. You're waiting for a long time. You're waiting afterwards. You've got to go back to the finish line. They might need an hour or two to recover and sit on the grass somewhere. So there's lots of opportunities where there's an audience that are waiting and need something kind of interactive to do as they're watching the runners.
There's almost no other spectator sport like it, where there's so much waiting, and therefore, the kind of active audience or the need for entertainment is being shared by so many people. Yeah. And in terms of cheer zones, is this something which you've seen taken part of by the supporters, or is this more kind of set pieces for the runners themselves?
Yeah, I think cheer zones really boomed. Like the original cheer zone was the Run Dem crew. They kind of owned it, and they still own it. And every single year, you get brands, businesses like ours, people involved in running that say, "How do we do what Run Dem crew do?" And I don't know if anybody's going to do what Run Dem crew do. So for those of you that don't know, they're a group of ethnic minorities, not, as we said before, the London Marathon and lots of these big races, very, very middle class, white orientated in the past. And this group of Charlie Dark, who started it, has got a group of black guys and girls that have really got into running and started to run races, but it didn't feel open to them. It wasn't, they couldn't see other people running it who looked like them. They didn't see these like inspirations. So they created Run Dem Crew. They ran regularly, doing normal kind of weekly runs, and then they started to get into marathons, and they started to get runners that were running the London Marathon, and they wanted to support them. So they created this station at mile 21, which just became a huge party, and it was natural. These guys like to party. They've got boom boxes and dancers, and they jump up and down like no tomorrow when somebody goes past, and they've got like glitter and sparkles and confetti and everything that you can kind of think of. But that as an experience for the runners now is people want to get to mile 21. They stop and they dance and they hang out there, and that's part of their like running experience. And Charlie Dark's built a brand for himself. He's in GQ. He's on the cover of that. He's mainly from creating a cheer zone at London Marathon, which has become an iconic part of the race. So brands are like, how can we do that? How can we do that? It's good. And lots of brands have done it, and there's now Rainbow Row, which is this kind of LGBTQ plus sort of supporters area, which is also pretty iconic as part of the London Marathon now. But the big sponsors and the charities have created their own cheer zones and do similar things. I don't think anybody's done it as well as those guys, and they are the originals and they're going to own it. But actually, it's interesting that now TAG have started partnering with Rundown Crew, and they've started to kind of put TAG's brand in that Rundown Crew area and start to link it to what they're doing. So actually, I think from a brand point of view, maybe you won't get the authenticity of doing a cheer zone yourself and to do the actual experiences. But I know New Balance did a little bit of this last year, but working with communities and saying, how do I get my brand involved in these specific communities that are doing really cool things? People are following them, people like them, people who've already inspired by it. And I think that's a nice opportunity for the live experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And that authenticity is often the kind of secret ingredient to making a kind of an experience just absolutely sing, compared to it feeling like a kind of staged marketing effort. I guess as we start to look towards the end of the podcast, what do we think the missing opportunities are? We touched on this active audience who are there in support of runners who they might only see a glimpse of in 5 hours, and then also the viewers at home. Surely these are kind of two further ripe markets.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's to talk about the viewers at home. I mean, it's televised on the BBC, and it's one of the most watched sporting events of the year. You hear the music, and it's London Marathon Day, and it's kind of on in the background for most people for those long period of time, for that kind of 4 or 5 hours where you hear those emotional stories about why people are running and what they're doing, and that's a really, really exciting, interesting thing is around that. Brands actually, I think, have done quite a poor job in terms of exposure on TV. It's branding, it's signage, and it's how do you get your brand on the background of a BBC camera footage. But I think there's much more opportunities. Actually, what we did this year was I think was good, but maybe a little bit biased. One of our content creators actually ran the marathon, and one of our videographers ran the marathon backwards because he was filming her the whole way through. Right. So that was a feat in itself, but he was filming her, and she interviewed people on the route. But she just asked them the question about, what's your why for being here? And the stories that she kind of got out of that were incredible. It was just an emotional story of this guy who lost his son and stopped and had a hug with him and kind of brought to life a lot of that experience. And I think BBC do some of it, but actually could brands own a bit more of that storytelling piece that can go onto TV, that can go into podcasts and content. And then I think the other thing that's missing from kind of a little bit on the live experience and potentially on the digital experiences is we always see that road as a blank canvas. There's this 26.2 miles of road that is got no traffic on it. Yeah, it's got 50,000 people on it.
But they're spread out. The grey of the road is still this kind of dominating feature on any screen, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that they brand the sides, but what can you do on that road? And I think there's an experiential angle of can you trigger content? Can you project onto the road? We see a lot more of that now, but can you project onto the road some of those messages of support that we talked about earlier? I thought about some nice things. Actually, could it be that you scan someone's face 500 meters before, and then you put some funny glass, some of the fancy dress that we had, we could do that digitally and put that back on the road, or put that on a screen in front of them. But as a runner, you're looking at the road the whole time. You're focused on where your next step's going to be, not falling over. You kind of really can engage with that blank canvas. So I think we can do a lot more there.
You say about the bringing those kind of emotional messages through. It's, you know, you've got people being live interviewed around the space, but it would be an interesting play for a brand who's not typically known for, you know, sports, and as you say, actually running as a category is very much around mental health and kind of well-being more than fitness itself. And therefore that could be a really interesting kind of play for them, and, you know, whether that's, you know, broadcast live or whether that's actually more of a digital content piece. And then, yeah, finally, I guess in terms of the, you know, the headline sponsors, your TCSs or your tags, if you're fortunate enough to be on TCS's hospitality list, you know, but you're not going to run. That's not your thing. You know, how can that day be kind of elevated for them whilst they still get to feel the kind of raw energy of being in the London Marathon audience?
Yeah, definitely. I think those corporate areas are really important. They will have a lot of runners, so there will be people that run, and a lot of the time the corporate areas are about sorting logistics. So you know, taking away some of that difficulties of dropping your bag, getting your number, all of those kind of things, smoothing that process out from corporate. But then I think the opportunity there from an experiential point of view is how can that turn into content that you can then share with others. So you get these 100 people have this great corporate experience, but do they walk away with TCS branded content, photos that they then go and share with others and get that TCS name out there.
I guess create it kind of meaningful for then the general public, and create that full loop. Yeah, definitely. And I think we've got to kind of always go back to this is a once in a lifetime experience, memory moment for people. And I think if brands can help support, create those memories digitally, content is something that you're going to want forever. You want a photo of you with that number. You want a photo of you with that medal. You want a photo of you looking pretty horrible running around at 21 miles. But that's the memory that you need to do. And I think kind of brands supporting with that on the corporate side of things, but also for the masses is a big opportunity. Should we move into some Charlie GPT?
Charlie GPT. God, I've been waiting a while for this.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to again explain Charlie GPT. So I've just fed it our kind of like tech capabilities and like past projects, and so I can just put in a brief, and you know it will just kind of give us like some base ideas that there might be one thing, even the title of the experience, that can like kick off things for us, rather than it actually kind of. Like the full idea is that it's not that, but yeah, let's have a look. So there was like two options I kind of went down. One which was more of the kind of technical side. We were talking about like New Balance. So if you're in that start area, and it would be a kind of tech on track. So it would be an interactive like foot scan station. So it's all about like modelling. The shoes to kind of fit your gait, the shape of your feet exactly. Obviously, it's a bit late. Maybe for next year's marathon, you'll have the perfect shoe.
Surely they want to do this when the ballot is released, so that as soon as you know you're running, you come in with, and let's make sure,
That's
you know,
true. Yeah.
and for a company like TCS, this could actually be quite a nice little consumer play for them, a kind of play on their services and their technical services, but actually it's done through a web browser, or that you can do it yourself at home.
Definitely. I think, again, it goes back to a lot of sponsors think about London Marathon as being one day in the end of April, and it's not. It's that 9-month experience. That's a great idea and a great way that you can get in early and you can start to talk to people through those 9-month period from when they find out they're in till race day.
Another one was step inside the shoe, and it's like an augmented reality pod. So you kind of go in this pod and you can interact with the screen, and it will show sort of AR graphics and just like the build of the shoe. Like
and when you say pod, you are talking about a physical shoe that's been created.
Well, I imagine this is where we could take it. I guess you could actually literally walk in the shoe, and that'd be quite cool, like engineering wise.
And I mean, I have worked for accessories brands before, one of them being a shoe brand. The number of basically different components that will go into any particular shoe is vast, and in a technical running shoe, particularly if they've got plates in or anything like that, actually this would be a very, very kind of rich experience to see the layers built up, the materials, the benefits, and that sort of thing. So yeah, that could be a good way to supersize the product, make it really, really accessible.
Yeah. And then another angle went down was charity, and Miles for Smiles was I just love the title, but it's a virtual booth that fans around the course can like take a photo of themselves, then choose like a charity, and then that would then build up. You could have like the map of the London Marathon, and you can see like who's watching, what charity they're kind of going for and stuff. So it just kind of makes the spectators more visible, and of course it makes the charities more visible as well.
That's a great idea, and I'm sure that some charities will have access to a content creation mechanism, but for a lot of smaller businesses that's not going to be possible. So to have some sort of search function where it brings up that brand's graphics to include on the image is a really great value add actually for the charities to be generating content across the 9-month period. Great.
Yeah, absolutely.
If we start to wrap up, and I guess it'd be great to hear if anyone's got some kind of key takeaways from the last 30 minutes or so. Dan, if you want to go first before I...
Yeah, sure. I think as we've kind of been discussing things, I've probably got a couple of things to take away. One is definitely it's a longer period than most brands kind of think about. I think the opportunity is deep engagement with smaller groups. You've got this highly engaged audience, and if you can get into them for a 9-month period, you can walk away with really deep connections with that group. And then I think on the day, it's probably about being more innovative. Like I think we're kind of stuck in quite a lot of branding. We're stuck in quite a lot of, okay, this is a TV thing. The opportunity is we've got all these millions of viewers on TV. Let's get our brand out there. But actually, I think the opportunity is to be a bit more creative, get into storytelling a bit more, get into kind of content creation a bit more, and give that experience to both runners and supporters that I think we can do a lot more of.
Yeah, go that extra mile.
Yeah, there you go. I don't think you should say that to anybody at the end of a marathon.
Andy, what about you?
Well, main thing, I think it's all. I like the community-based stuff when you were saying about like the kind of the cheer zones and things, and think we talk about brands, but like the human element with connecting people with charities, and then once you do that, then yes, you can align brands with that, but at the core, it's all about human relationships and achievements. For me, anyway.
Great, and yeah, on my side, it really is about the audience not being the runners. The audience is their support network, and if that goes on for 9 months, or if it's brands getting on the ground for that weekend event, actually the kind of active eyes and ears and the need for entertainment is so great that how can you be getting down at a real a personal level that's not sponsorships and logos, but it's actually a kind of real engagement drive for everyone who's there. So finally, the last thing that we do is give our guests the opportunity to talk about anything that is important to them, or even kind of give a plug for the kind of businesses and brands that they're working for.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've talked about running and training enough that for an experiential podcast. But if anybody is running the marathon, I would highly recommend to check out Coopah. Download on the App Store, or you can check out Coopah Marathon Club, which is our club that's going to provide you tips and tricks and advice all the way through from now until race day. But but for me, it's been really exciting to get back into experiential. Talk a bit more about some of those experiential things. We're very much in a app selling mode, which is a lot of digital experiences and less of the live stuff. So thank you very much for having me on, and it's been really fun.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Dan.
Yeah, cheers, Dan.
And thank you to all of our listeners. Make sure you check out our previous episodes that you can find on Spotify and on YouTube and shared across our socials. If you think that anything you've heard today will be relevant for your upcoming events, please do get in touch with us, and we'll see how we can make it experiential together.